Welcome back, everyone. This is the Refresh Point. My name is Ben, and as always, I'm joined by my constant co-host, Steve. How's it going?
You know what? Been a great week. How about yourself, Ben?
You know, I got here early. It's like not 8 p.m. after fist fighting my way through every DFW driver, you know? It's a great time.
Yeah, I mean, if only the state of Texas was a bit smaller.
Yeah.
We'd all be happier. Sure.
Yeah. You know, Houston would be closer. We could drive there easier. Because we're about to do so, and ideally win a regional. But before that, we can take a quick preview of the SAO release and how it fares without the novel 10th Annie set, alongside a look at Steve's ambitious deck building, where he tells me about a deck, and I also shake my head, but just a little bit. Not as much as when Steve listens to me. So, shuffle your decks, tap or cut, and we'll get right into the refresh point with some breaking news. Here comes SAO. We mentioned it last time, but, you know, sound the alarms. SAO's coming.
Yeah, so we have our official release date today, the day of the recording of this podcast. So, yeah. The Sword Art Online fans have been waiting patiently, dutifully, to return to the meta, and boy are they.
It's time. Also, at the time of release of this podcast, not recording, Houston is tomorrow. So we'll be there, obviously. It's a few hours drive. Me and a few buddies are going to enter the Vanguard tournament and get a nice playmat, and then presumably lose enough to go to lunch.
I think that sounds like a solid plan.
And there is going to be a new Weiss announcement. It would have been actually 3 days before this recording. So we're going to have a very delayed reaction to the spring conference news.
Yeah.
But it was so awesome! Did you see the release? Oh my god. It's so crazy. I can't believe they would announce that. Did you see that English exclusive? It was crazy. It was wild. It was nuts.
And there we go. We've got the exact reaction that we want, and because we're time travelers, we know it will work.
An actual piece of news that did drop today, that we can just gloss over really quick, was that the review movie set was announced.
Yeah, they kind of came out of nowhere and just dropped it and ran.
Yeah.
Right on Twitter.
Uh-huh. And, you know, I was the fool. I was like, you know, I'm not sure they'll bring it over. Even though they brought the mobile game set like 5 years or something, or 3 years or something after it released in JP. I don't know if they'll bring out the movie set and so soon. And the other review enthusiast, he was like, nah, I'm not buying the mobile set. I know it's coming. And he was right.
He had faith.
He had faith. I didn't, and I got double fucked for 2 sets in a row. So,
well, one possible positive thing that could be taken away from this, not for review fans, they're doomed, but the Fruit of Grisaya set 1 is releasing very soon.
Oh yeah.
And if there's ever a sign that they will likely drag set 2 kicking and screaming into English, this is probably it. So, great news for those fans. They can hold on to their
and
hopium.
The American fleet is definitely coming for English
any minute now.
Any second now. But yeah, that's really all the news we have today. And now, it's time for some ambitious deck building.
Love ambitious deck building.
This time, Steve's got a plan. He's a Bang Dream enthusiast, and when the anniversary set came out, he was ready. With his favorite fact or fiction choice, Tay with toilets.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Bang Dream, and in specific, we're going to talk about Popping Party, which is the band that I like. I've never listened to any Bang Dream. This is purely on
What do you mean, man?
I know, I'm the worst. All the Bang Dream fans are like, boo this man!
You haven't listened to a single song?
I have not listened to any Bang Dream. I have not watched any Bang Dream anime. But
I've even seen like some of the Roselli stuff because like one of our friends just had it on the TV.
Right. It's not personal. I just don't watch anime. But what I will say is from a visual character perspective, I like the popping party characters.
Okay, yeah.
And from a mechanics perspective, they've always been strong the entire time that Bang Dream's been out. So this is a popping party deck. Ostensibly, it is mostly an anniversary deck, but what we're trying to do is take some of the old stuff, the broken stuff, if we can be honest, and drag it, kicking and screaming, into a more modern shell. So we've seen that a few times throughout the history of Weiss, where a deck ostensibly is too old to be competitive, and then it gets a new set, and we get to do some grave robbing, where we just bust open the old corpses with a shovel, grab the parts that we want, and drag them and put them in a brand new body.
All right. So what organ transplants do we want in the modern day Bang Dream deck?
So
for you specifically.
So everybody is raiding the sarcophaguses for buns for luck. This card has been around for the entire history of the Bang Dream set, and at no point has it not been relevant. It is just the most powerful, overpowered, if one might say, stock swap mechanic in the history of Weiss. They've never printed it in this way ever again, because it is not fun. So, level 2 event, pay 1, take all your stock, put it in the waiting room, replace it with cards from the top of the deck. It is cheap. It hits at a time when you are likely to have a excess of stock, and so you are likely to be punished greatly, and there's just nothing else to be said about it. It's unbelievable. But the other powerful event we're going to grab from the very first Bang Dream set is That Irritating Girl, also colloquially called by the community as Toilets, since it shows a girl sitting on a toilet crying. The art is sad, but the mechanic is great. So
okay, sure.
We get to stock a character from the waiting room during main phase, which gaining main phase stock is never a bad thing. And then on attack, we give a character on attack, reveal the top. If it's a music character, you just add it. Okay. So we got bonus money, and we get bonus hand. Basically, draw a card. So really solid advantage from that mechanic. Really solid stock disadvantage from the other mechanics. So we got these two very old cards. They've been around the whole time that Bang Dream's been around. But over time, the machine has changed so many parts out that you might forget that some of these really old cards still are there and still relevant. So one of the things that is problematic about That Irritating Girl is you are unsure whether it's going to work.
Right.
So
I want my advantage to work, gosh darn it.
Right.
I want the advantage.
Right. And so what we need a way to guarantee that it will work. Or at the very least, do our best to guarantee that it will work. So That Irritating Girl as a mechanic pairs extremely well with one of the climax combos that is part of the Popping Party set, which is Music of Bond's Te... I'm not going to try and pronounce the last name. Te. Hanazono Te. So,
sure.
It's you need Popping Party characters on board to give her power, 2k power. And then when she attacks, this is on Pants, you have to have 2 or more other Popping Party characters. You reveal 3 cards from the top of your deck. Your opponent picks 1. That goes into your hand. You pick 1, up to 1, and you put it on top. And then you put the rest in the waiting room. So
interesting.
They've printed this combo in other sets. I think Ruby probably has the most recent iteration of it. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't been a popular combo because you are basically checking 3 and adding 1, but your opponent is adding probably whatever the most clunky, worst one is. So that's not ideal.
And we hate that, yeah.
Yeah. What we want is to get the cards we want. And even better is to get the cards we want and the cards that they give us, which is the best possible scenario. So the other thing is Tay can give you events. Your opponent can give you events from this, but they cannot give you climaxes.
Sure.
So what can we do with this? Well, in combination with that irritating girl, let's say we reveal 2 characters and a climax. Well, now we know it doesn't matter which one of them they give us, because we're going to get both. We're going to get the one they put in our hand, and then we're going to put the other one on top. And then we're going to get that one. So you can decide, normally which card you're going to give me, but if I have that irritating girl, it becomes non-choice, where it doesn't matter what you pick. There is no choice. There's an illusion that there will be a choice.
Yeah.
And so that combination of cards turns the Tay combo from a pseudo choice for your opponent into a factor of fiction, which is a magic card that allows your opponent to separate cards into 2 stacks, and then you pick one of the stacks. It's the same thing. It's an illusion of choice, where it doesn't matter what you choose. I'm going to get everything I want because I created the situation in the first place.
Okay, so ideally then, when you're popping off this combo, you have 3 Tays, the climax, and 3 irritated girls. This is a lot, I feel like, to set up for level 1. But you have played the deck a bunch. How consistent is this early game setup? How often do you get 1, 2, even 3 Tay with irritating girl?
So Tay with irritating girl is a big ask. You have 4 irritating girls and 4 Tays, obviously. We have ways to get irritating girls if they manage to fall into the waiting room. So the character that's on that irritating girl is named Orisa, and so there are several Orisa type cards that will interact with that irritating girl. So the most straightforward of those is Happy Halloween Orisa, which is also from the very base set. Trying to get a hold of these could be awkward. I haven't looked at TCG Player, but it's just one of those cards that it's so old and it's just very annoying to find. So you have to discard a bonsai character, and you can salvage an irritating girl and then give a music character 1,000 power. So you can give Tay a little bit of power, and you can pick up that irritating girl from the waiting room. Problem is you need a bonsai character. Mm-hmm. So there's only one person who has the bonsai trait.
Oh.
Orisa.
Oh.
But starting with Girls Band Party, which is the second or third Bang Dream set, they stopped printing flavor keywords on these characters. They started giving them music and whatever their band trait is. Oh. So none of the other Orisas are going to come with bonsai natively.
That's not great.
No. So this card would be dead on arrival if it wasn't for the fact that for several cards, or for one card up to this point, that has Orisa on it, it has bonsai while it's in your hand. Oh. So it's like a sneaky bonus trait. So it's you can tap to give a character 1,000, and then whenever you play a music character, you can look at the top. So again, another mechanism to possibly ensure that irritating girl will work outside of the Tay combo. But thanks to the anniversary set, we got the best bonsai card ever added to this deck. So it has bonsai in hand. It's the Orisa Chaser we talked about briefly last week. It's 3k power, and the character across from it cannot side attack as long as you have 5 or more cards in hand, and at the start of your opponent's attack step, you can run in front.
Hi.
So a very annoying character, definitely something you would not mind having 4 of in a deck. So now we've gotten a vast increase in the amount of bonsai cards that we have available. So this Bonder all of a sudden has a lot more to work with. And that's the type of card that you wouldn't mind ditching later in the game because it isn't that valuable. Once you've gotten past 0, a 3k chase in front type mechanic is not super important to your hand. At least not in the context of that irritating girl. Absolutely. So we have a way to bond that irritating girl. We have a Ricky and like the standard mechanisms for getting Tays in hand. So we have a decent outcome where we can get 2 to 3 Tays plus 2 to 3 irritating girls relatively often. I would say 60% of the time you can get 2 to 3 Tays with 1 or 2 irritating girls almost every time. So that's nice. Great. We're generating crap loads of money. Basically, every time we play an Irritating Girl, we get a free stock. So we want to keep playing them as often as we can. And because of the Orisa Peak card, we can get an idea of what that Irritating Girl is going to produce. One final comment about Tay. The other thing that she can do is choose the trigger. So even if you don't want the card necessarily that's going to come from it, you can choose whether to produce more damage, by forcing triggers. You can choose whether to trigger pants or door if you need more hand size. So being able to select the trigger and getting advantage off of it by forcing your opponent to give you one of the cards that are going to come from it, it is a very good combo for a number of reasons. There are some downsides. We'll get to the downsides when we talk about the ways this deck isn't good. But we are going to use that money to transition into a very powerful level 2 game that was introduced during some older Bang Dream sets. So these.
Right. So what's our 2 game now? We've generated a lot of cash.
Yeah.
What are we going to use all of the cash on?
So now we're going to cash out with the very famous, never overrated Chutu and Pareo. So Chutu and Pareo were part of the Morphonica set, Raise the Sullian, and they are 2 very obnoxious early play mechanics. One is a 2/1, one is a 3/2. The 3/2 can only come on board if you're climaxes, and it gets buffed by the 2/1. And during the encore step, you can heal. The 2/1 buffs the 3/2, and then while it's on board, it buffs. While the 3/2 is on board, the 2/1 gets buffs. So they buff each other.
Right.
So
you got this big double trigger 13k over here, paired up with this big 10-5 2/1. Why not? Just with hand encore, I think, over here.
Yes, that's correct. So the 2/1 gets hand encore and 10-5 power. The 3/2 gets 2,000 for each of the 2/1s on board.
Oh, it's 2,000 for each. Yeah.
Right.
You could even be bigger.
Correct. And it gets hexproof, cannot be chosen by opponent's effects, and pay 1 to trigger twice. So. And cannot be auto-reversed. I don't think there's very many natural auto-reversers still kicking around in the modern format, but that is a thing. So we get these 2. We get we spend as much as we feel like we can on just death gripping the board with these characters early and often. So we heal down, we get some big guys, we get to get some clean triggers, or if we get dirty triggers, we can pay out those dirty triggers. So just a very solid mid-game that, can keep the game in range for Kasumi.
All right. And so what's the finisher?
So yeah, we talked about Kasumi last
Okay.
week, and Kasumi is just a very, very good finisher for the meta, especially. So we talked about Kasumi a little bit last week. Kasumi is on door. Her climax combo is with door. It's pay 2 at the end of the attack to burn 2, and then anti-damage during your opponent's turn.
Anti-auto effect damage.
Anti-auto effect damage, correct. So you can't take damage from your opponent's auto effects during battle.
battle.
Right. So any front attack, you can't take damage during that whole process. So we also get to draw 2, ditch 2, and stock from the top on play. So triple Kasumi is going to cost you 6 stock and is likely to draw into probably whatever it needs to get going.
And you just generated all the money you need. So
right, and so you have an artificial amount of money, extra money that you will have during the game, and that's kind of a theme with Bang Dream. They have a number of ways to generate some sneaky stock. They also printed a Brainstorm in Anniversary set that can run to stock as an act. So they've always had sneaky main phase money that they can use. So it just lets you get unnatural plays that should not happen during the game. So it's a lot to be able to afford Chutu and Pareo and Kasumi. You should not be able to do Chutu and Pareo and Kasumi and Buns for Luck and the Orisa Fumio. So the end game best case scenario for this deck is you either have 9 stock minus however many irritating girls you have in hand. Mm-hmm. Because you can draw them off of the Kasumi and get even more unnatural amounts of money.
Right, sure.
So, what we want to do is, this finisher doesn't deal tremendous damage, and we need to make sure that it's going to work, or do the best we can to make sure that it's going to work. Mm-hmm. What will make that work? Well, if we hit 3 first, it is likely our opponent will have stock that we want to stock swap with Buns for Luck. But sometimes the deck state doesn't support that. If your opponent's still got a lot of cards in their deck, stock swapping them may not be an actual advantage mathematically. It may be that you just push them into more blocks, or whatever, you can't know.
Right.
But what you can know is if a whole bunch of their stock is clean, and then you put it in the waiting room, and then you replenish it with questionable cards from the top of their deck, then take all the clean cards and force them to shuffle them back into their deck. Well, at the very least, you decompressed all the clean cards that were in there. So, our final old relic from set 1 is an Orisa, which also has Bonsai, since it's from set 1.
Nice.
It gives 1,500 to all, and then on play, you can rest one of your standing characters to force your opponent to choose one climax and hold it out, and then reshuffle all their cards back into their deck.
You even get to keep your money. It just rests another guy.
Yeah. So
now, okay. So, nice. But I can't help but notice that in your list, there's this 3 soul down event that I see that's very popular. That's not in it.
Yes.
What gives?
So, part of committing to that irritating girl is that irritating girl can only draw music characters. So, we have 8 climaxes. We can't draw those. We have 4 irritating girls. And we can't draw those. And we have Buns for Luck, which we can't draw those either. So, we're already flirting with about a third of the deck that we can't get. So, we need to minimize the chance that we will have that happen, because we want to gain hand size off of that irritating girl. It's nice that it produces money, but we also need hand size, because until we hit level 2, our board is not very sticky and is prone to death. So, we definitely want to make sure it hits as frequently as possible. So, part of that is, unfortunately, saying goodbye to the Kasumi minus Souls event. Because while we would love to have everything, the Buns for Luck is probably more important in more matchups than the Kasumi minus Souls event. So, I love the minus Souls event for the matchups where it's good. If you're playing 8 door, you should absolutely run it. But for this particular build, I don't think we can afford it.
Okay. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Well then, so, in more unfortunate scenarios here, let's say, very standard thing happens, your deck refreshes, your opponent tries to hit you, you cancel 3 times, you're at level 2. What are we doing now?
So, it's very bad. It's very bad. That's what we do have one out.
Oh, okay.
We have one out.
There's an out.
Yes.
Oh.
So thanks to the magic of the anniversary set.
Ah, okay.
We got another Orisa. Doesn't have Bonsai.
Oh,
but
shucks.
it is what it is. It's a 2/1, and what it does is you pitch an event, and then you can refresh your deck.
Ah.
So we can use excess irritating girls or possibly Buns for Luck to reset the deck. And so it also has the benefit of being a level 3 Slayer. Mm-hmm. So it's a little undersized for being a level 3 Slayer, but it's still big enough to kill most normal size level 3s, we'll say.
Sure.
But it gives us a way to reset. So if we think that it's likely we could be in this scenario, we can attempt to sculpt that 2/1 so that we can, escape basically from that sort of scenario. You don't want it to happen, you hope it doesn't happen. If it does happen and you don't have the Orisa, you can't escape basically, then it's going to be a hard road at level 2. Because you can't really play Pareo without Chu 2, because Pareo is a 2/1 5500. That's not really going to get the job done. So we do have copies of the 1/1 red anti-early to memory. So we can use that to possibly assert some control over some lanes. But we may just have to do what we can. You know, if we can Tay combo again, maybe we'll just Tay combo again. Try to get more cards. Try to get more resources for level 3. If we can bond some more that irritating girls and maybe do that and just crash the board and wait for Cosme, then maybe that's what we do.
You know, the good old scuff turn.
Yes.
And a classic play in every Weiss player's playbook.
For sure. And if, you know, it's one of those things where early plays have started to become easier and easier and easier and easier to pull off. Most of them now that people are running are, you know, they're for more early plays, and so there is no brick off condition short of the game is going completely sideways. But the best early plays are still the two or fewer climaxes. They have the strongest effects, and so to get the strongest effects, you have to take the biggest risks. That's just how it is.
That's just how it is. And you know, this Tay combo is all well and good, but I can't help but notice that at the top of the hour, we talked about the incoming South set with its 2/1 Alice combo. And I can't help but notice that Tay is not that big.
It's not great. It's not great.
Okay, alright.
So
do we have an answer?
So we have our red Alice. We have our red 1/1 anti-early to memory.
Okay.
So we can sculpt that and try to like bomb one of them or however many we think we can bomb. But I don't think bombs are a super great answer to Alice, but it's certainly better than doing nothing. The other thing is you could change some of the deck to accommodate a 2-Slayer or something like this to try and overcome Alice. But ultimately, I think in most board states, there are going to be 2 Alices on the board. You want to have a Tay turn before Alice. That's probably the most important thing.
Just eat damage first.
Right. Or you want to rush them in a way where they can't set up 2 Alices. If they set up 1 Alice, then you might be able to grip control of the board at some point. But if they manage to set up 2 Alices, you can bomb 1 and you can just kind of run it in lane 3. But it's not going to be great. It's going to be medium, you know? If they have 1 Alice on the board, I think you have to accept that as a win. That's like a normal, like a state neutral setup. If they have 2+ Alices on the board and you can't remove them, that is bad. That is very bad. And your opponent is going to gain tremendous advantage. So if you see that they're going to drop Alice before you drop Tay, then maybe you use your Ricky to sculpt that 1/1 anti-early to memory. Mm-hmm. You know, so you can at least assert over 1 lane. Because the only saving grace about the Alice combo is that if you can manage to push them off the board, it's hard to get them back before level 2. Because what frequently follows the Alice 2/1 turn is a refresh, because you've gotten the deck extremely small so that you can get your Alices off. And then you're going to clear the rest of the deck probably with autos. So once the deck turns over, the chance of you being able to just get another one before level 2 seems highly unlikely. So I think you accept any state where they have 1 Alice and you can win 2 lanes. And then you hope for the best after that. Because from level 2 and on, you should be able to outperform them. Because they don't really have an early play that can overcome Chutu and Pareo very easily. So once you're able to hit level 2, get Chutu and Pareo down, and push the Alices off the board, then you can assert yourself a little bit.
So, the Tay Kasumi Bang Dream deck. Infinite Money Glitch, Chutu and Pareo, and Kasumi herself. Minus a Soul Stone event. But, you know, that's not necessary. You know, surely it's all fine. We don't need that.
We still get anti-damage.
We still get, you know, anti-autos. It'll be fine.
So, I've played this deck quite a bit, and once the Springfest season winds down, I'll play it more instead of I don't play any game that isn't relatively competitive. I haven't been playing them at tournaments because I've been preparing for Springfest, but once Springfest is over, we'll start playing this at more tournaments. I think that it's a very good deck with a game plan, and I think that that's really important. You know, even if you can't win lanes consistently or contest the board consistently or do any of this sort of stuff, if you have a plan and the money to get there and the cards to get there, and it's a good plan, then I think that that's a reasonable deck build. So we will be posting on the YouTube, we will post the link to this deck so that you can try it for yourself. And if you think it's great, then feel free to tell us that you think that is great.
Now that Bonder is about 30 cents right now. So it's pretty cheap.
That's great.
Now that irritating girl.
That's not so cheap.
How much do you think it is off the top of your head? Just a guess.
I would hope that it's not more than $20.
It's about $30.
Oh, no.
So if you want to try it and you don't already own it, I have a little bit of bad news. But, you know.
Well, we could always reach for, instead of TCG player, we could reach for the HP player.
Yeah.
And we could just print that bad boy out.
Absolutely.
And give it a go. And if we think it's reasonable, then we can worry about that.
Yeah, there you go.
That's a problem for future you. After you like the deck.
Absolutely. A quick little mini preview here, because Movie Set Review is coming, and it's coming in September. Me and the other local Review Starlight enthusiasts, we've been sitting back, literally just most of today, just talking about deck builds. We were like, okay. I understand that we went over this when it came out in JP, but those were meme builds. Now, how can we win?
Well,
and I think it's interesting that there's two things that we've generally highlighted. And number one is the whole Karen Hikari thing, that every review set kind of just leans towards because they're the two main characters and review likes to favor them, and so there's that whole package that gets off 4 attacks, a bunch of burn 2s, a check 3 mixed here and there, an event that burns or grabs the climax, a lot of interesting stuff. But then also is a set 1 finisher that we're eyeing, and that says when you play the climax, pay 1, ditch Futaba or Karuko. Give your other 2 characters on cancel, burn 2.
I think that this combo was flirted with quite a bit when the first set came out.
Oh yeah, and now instead of having to run shot wind or 8 wind, we got choice.
Is that choice wind?
It's choice wind.
We
have choice.
You know what? One good trigger is better than no good choice.
We have choice. We also have pants. These are both good 1 combos from the 3rd set. One of them salvages just on attack, full field. One of them checks 4, add a card.
Love both.
There's an off finisher from set 2, which is, it's coming. There's an off finisher that lets you draw a card to replace it, and then check your triggers. And then it's on reverse, pay 2, burn 3.
I find that off finishers are something that good off finishers are not something that gets printed very often, and they're very nice to have in certain quantities. What does this card do on play?
It's the draw and check.
Draw and check 3.
Uh-huh.
So I don't hate it. It would be a lot better if it healed.
Yeah, that's live. It gets 3k power. It's
sure,
massive.
It's big.
Yeah.
It's on reverse, it better be big.
Yeah. You get to check your triggers, you get to drop, you get to replace it,
There's a lot to like there. Yeah.
And so
I'm looking forward to some ambitious review deck building.
We're cooking a little bit.
Well, we're definitely gonna let them cook.
We'll be cooking. If you're a review fan, reach out, let us know what your ideas are as well. Because we don't believe in the new Futaba finisher, or no, the new Kaworiko finisher. The set 3 version is on choice, but it's pay to, I think, ditch 1 or even ditch 2 on climax play to burn 1, burn 2.
That's a way better combo, but man, is it expensive.
It's so expensive.
And
we don't have that irritating girl. We have a tomato. The tomato goes to stock and gives a character on attack, check your triggers, pick 1, attack with it. But it doesn't add a card to your hand.
Well, that's not ideal.
So, we'll be cooking a little bit. But finally for today, it's a little bit of a shorter episode today, but that's okay. We'll have plenty to talk about yet. Here comes a new challenger. It's SAO. Let's talk about it properly. We've touched on it so much in previews and flashes here and there of warning, but here it is. Let's actually dive into it and really get into what's different about it, because we don't have the novel 10th Any set, which had a few tools that is being played in Japan right now that we don't necessarily have. So, start with the basics. What is Alice?
All right, so every content creator is going to be talking about this set, and this set will be everywhere, because not just because of Sword Art fans who will buy the set because we have real signatures.
Yeah.
For the first time in a while.
Yeah.
Bushiroad apparently decided to crack open the wallet and give Aniplex their due. So we have real signatures, which is going to attract tons of fans of the anime, fans of the VAs. And more than that, there's just going to be a tremendous amount of cards opened for this set. People are going to be looking for specific cards. They're going to be looking because they love SAO, because it's a huge property, and because everybody's been watching this set and talking about it in Japan, watching it just run roughshod over their meta. So we're going to talk about Alice, because Alice is very similar to another mechanic that already exists in English. So Tokyo Revengers has a mechanic that is very similar to what this Alice is going to do.
Yeah, we talked about it in the San Gabriel Spike Corner, but if you forget, the Tokyo Revengers setup has this guy named Pa Chen and his homie. And what the homie does is he can shuffle 2 cards back in. He has a spammable Brainstormer for 3 to, if you reveal the Pa Chen, it's an 8/5 vanilla. If you just reveal him off that Brainstormer, play him.
Yeah.
Why not?
And he gives it 4K, so it's giant.
Yeah.
So Alice does something very similar. She has a 1/0 that shuffles in 2, and then gives -1,000 power when she does it, and then she gives 500 to all, and then we have the Brainstorm 3, pay 1 to Brainstorm 3, spammable. If it hits the 2/1, just put it up.
But now the difference between Pa Chen and Alice is that Alice has card text on it.
Yes, Alice has a combo. So Alice is 216k, 1,000 for each on the board. And on choice, when you play the climax, you can salvage 1 and stock 1 from the waiting room. Any characters you like.
Which is pretty good. And I think, honestly, one of the more deceptively really good parts that, some beginning players might not think about is that you get the advantage when you play the climax. People can eye their anti-early punches or their bombs, but once they've played the combo, it is more than likely they've already gotten, the brunt of the advantage off of it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the most difficult, annoying parts of this combo is that, let's say you have a level 1 anti-early counter. That's going to cost a lot of your resources to cast.
Yeah.
So there are no cheap level 1 anti-early counters. Probably the best one that's kicking around in the meta right now is the Kaguya one, and you have to discard 2 cards.
Yeah.
So that's ditch 3 for those of you playing along at home, since you have to lose the counter in addition.
Is it a pay one as well?
I don't believe so. Yes, you pay 1 and you ditch 2.
Yeah.
So we have to discard 3 cards and pay money. So lose half our hand and pay money, and then we can get rid of this thing.
Only 1.
Right, 1. And they've already derived the 2 bonus cards likely and the 2 bonus stock likely that they've gotten from having multiple Alices. Because the goal here is multiple Alices. It isn't that good of a combo if there's only 1. But getting multiple Alices takes work. So let's break it down a little bit. How can we get the entire deck empty at level 1? Which is not an easy thing to do for any deck. So the upside for SAO players and for this combo, and the reason this combo is played everywhere, is because they gave this set an unbelievable amount of milling tools that are free. Just free. They don't cost money. You just do them. They cost hand, but they just happen. So what do we have? We have an Asuna 002K, gets 2K on play, so we got a 4K, a beater, right? Beats over most anything in the front row.
Yeah.
And it's one of those on play, reveal the top 3. If there's an event, grab it, discard a card. So
Nice.
Worst case scenario, we milled 3 cards. Best case scenario, we got our 1-0 event. What does a 1-0 event do? So, yellow 1-0 event. On play, mill 4. And we can salvage a character level X or lower, X being the number of soul triggers revealed. So, we can get this event, that can get the Asuna, that can get the event, that can get Asuna. And so we have a repeatable machine that we can use to mill huge amounts of cards. What else can we do? Well, we could brainstorm, right? Every set's got one. This set's no exception. We have an Argo brainstorm. You can play events without color. That's really, really, really important for some builds.
Even better. Demonic Sword Graham.
Yes.
What's up?
Yes. And we can, whenever we play a climax, we give a character 1,000. So we can make Alice bigger in the Alice-Alice matchups. Or to beat over whatever huge guy, level 3 possibly, that might be on the opponent's board. And then brainstorm salvage. So we also have a Lifa, and this Lifa is maybe the best version of this mechanic. So there's been several cards with this mechanic where you discard a card, you reveal the top, and then you salvage equal to the level of whatever the revealed card is or lower. So, 7DS has this, Hololive has this, like, there's a million versions of this card. It's in Attack on Titan.
It's in most sets.
Right. It's become very common now.
Yeah.
The thing is that normally that card doesn't come with a very good kicker, if any. The Attack on Titan one has no kicker. So, and the 7DS one is like on attack, give a character 500. Kind of a very mediocre kicker.
Boffer's like a vanilla. Yeah.
Right.
Like a bunch of stuff.
The kicker for Lifa is put a card from your hand into stock.
Which is also a mechanic that generally doesn't pair well with other effects in other sets. Hololive has a Kaneda that lets you do 2, because why not? Like, I think there's one in Saikano. There's been a few, and it's happening more and more where you're able to translate your hand into money. But it's critical for this set. This card is critical for this set because 1, it lets you spam more Asunas, and spamming more Asunas means spamming more events, which means more mill, just more free mill. The other thing that it does is it allows you to get unnatural amounts of stock early in the game, because part of what makes this sort of tricky to pull off is that you need to brainstorm with stock, and you're not going to have very many turns before you need this to happen. So you will probably only have 3-ish stock at best when you're trying to pull this off, and probably 2.
So if we only have 2 stock, that basically means we get 2 shots at this thing or we fail. And if it fails, it's extremely bad. So this gives you an unnatural 3rd shot. A way that you might be able to generate some additional brainstorm opportunities. You might be able to use it to gain additional advantage. Let's say you discard a card, you reveal the top, and it's a climax. Well, now I can take a card from my hand and put it in a stock and then brainstorm, and I guarantee it's going to hit now. So we just translated nothing. We gained nothing, right? We took a card from our hand, we put it in a stock, and then we used the stock to put a card in our hand. But what we did was made this deck smaller in the process. So a lot of what makes this so good is that they have so many very cost-effective, cheap ways to get the deck pushed off.
And not to mention the Brainstormer itself, which is a 1/0. It's free to play. It can shove back 2 Alices straight back into the deck.
Right. And so it doesn't matter how many Alices go to the waiting room. Ideally, that's where you want them, because you're going to put them back anyway. So your ability to sculpt is very, very strong. To get the cards in hand that you need to succeed. The hardest part is getting the climax, arguably, because there won't be very much time to get it, and if you don't get it, it's really obnoxious. But if we think about it in the most optimistic way, even if you didn't have the climax, your opponent is likely going to have to work to get 2 Alices off the board.
They're 10Ks.
Yeah, they're 10-5 minimum.
Oh yeah, 10-5.
Because the brainstorm gives power. Mm-hmm. So, and the deck has backups. The deck has backups. So
memory backup too.
Yes, it has a 1/1 memory backup. And 2K. So if you don't think they're going to sculpt that the second that they get the combo off, well, I don't know what to tell you. If they think they're in danger, that card's going to be in hand, guaranteed.
The number to beat is not 10-5.
No,
it's 12-5.
It's 12-5 every
maybe
time.
13.
Yeah, if they somehow have
just
both of them on board.
Yeah.
So the thing is that this all takes quite a bit of work. And we're missing one of our important pieces that we have in Japan. As Ben alluded to, there is no manga 10th anniversary set in English. So they, in the manga set, printed a Kirito that's a 003K, and on death you can check up to 4 and add 1 anniversary character, and no level requirement. Just get it. And so maybe the best of the on death check 4 characters ever printed.
I wish I could get that.
Yes. All sets wish they had this, but it is keyword restricted. Only gets anniversary characters. Not going to be printed in English in all likelihood, so we won't have that tool. So we'll be much more reliant on other cards that don't really see as much play in Japan because they have that card. So the most important of those cards is a 0/0 administrator. So you take the administrator and you put it into the clock, and then you check X. And the X is the number of your opponent's characters, and you just add 1. Whatever. So a mill question mark number that can add additional cards to hand and mill additional cards for nothing. You just traded a card in hand for another card in hand, but you milled. And so that's the recurring theme with all these mechanics, is they're all stacked together, and they all cost very little stock, or none, and they deplete the deck rapidly. And so that's what allows this to happen. That's what allows this 2-1 combo to exist, is the ability to free rapid deplete the entire deck. So
what's the answer?
So that's that. Everybody is going to look into their individual set and find the answer.
Everybody wants to find their answer, the answer, some way to get this thing off the board.
So it's going to be very set specific. Yes. That's the unfortunate news here, is that it is possible that your set may not have a very great tool to deal with this card. It's possible.
I don't think Escanor likes this at all.
That set is troubled by this card. Their only out for it is likely to be Wielder of Rita.
No, yeah.
But Wielder of Rita is level based on copies.
Yeah.
So unless their deck is quite empty, and they know where all the copies are, it's going to be awkward because you can only play... Basically, you would have to have a perfect scenario to remove 2. Is likely you will only be able to remove 1, if any, because you'll need at least 2 copies in the waiting room. So, you have Wielder of Rita, maybe. Outside of that, it's pretty grim.
Yeah.
So, luckily for 7DS fans, that deck is a deck with a plan. It doesn't particularly concern itself with fighting for the board necessarily. It's nice. But it's not like it's going to rob you of any advantage in the process. Most decks are transitioning more towards Elizabeth and away from the Meliodas 2-1 anyway.
Uh-huh.
So, in most situations, it's not going to matter. They're just going to keep on trucking with their plan. The biggest problem for them is this exposes them to some risk, right? Opens up the lanes where you can take some bonus damage at times where you may not want to take some bonus damage.
And if you just go straight from 2 to 3... It's not looking great.
No, and it also gives the SAO player metric tons of resources. So they will be able to pay for and afford anything that comes up from that point forward. If you just concede the board to Alice, and they're able to Alice combo repeatedly during the game, they're going to throw the entire stock pool at you at some point.
We were talking about super old cards coming back from the grave. Anybody remember Opposition by Shield?
Yeah, and we're getting a new promo version of it in this set.
I think you can now run 12,
yes. Technically.
You would never want to.
Right.
But
yes.
You have options.
So in JP, they can run 12. Because one of those came from the Annies.
That
we're not going to get.
Yeah. We get 8.
So we get 8. So, yes. Opposition by the Shield, or its counterpart from the Anniversary set. Mm-hmm. They will be able to throw that at you if they have it in their deck. If they have expensive finishers, and there's a variety of them throughout the Sword Art ethos, right? They can throw those at you. If they're running the Kirito finisher, he's got a number of effects that can attach to him that cost various monies, and they can throw all those at you. So you just make the game exponentially harder because your opponent will be able to afford anything that comes up. Mm-hmm. So we don't want that. That's not good. So let's. The other thing is, like, the other big difference from JP is that we don't have Heathcliff. So in JP they have a Heathcliff that they can send to memory that prevents all Encore.
Oh.
And it's also it's the reason that this deck does very well into standby in Japan, and why standby is kind of moved slightly, down in the meta, I would say, is because decks that need to stay on the board with Encore cannot tolerate this card. The downside is Alice can't pay 3, but
who cares?
If you're death gripping the board and your opponent can't respond, the game's kind of already over at that point. And so if they're not running huge quantities of this card, it's not an every game card. It's just like, oh, is my opponent playing standby? Sculpt this card, drop this card. Now your 2/2s and 1/1s can't Encore. I hope that's not a problem.
Now, fortunately for English, can't do that. So Nino is honestly probably still fine.
Nino
to some degree.
Nino will be okay because it's the type of deck that didn't really do a great job at fighting for the board anyway. It's the biggest problem that Nino will have is the blue 1/1 that they've been leaning on forever to hold the board down. Won't. Alice will just decapitate that card.
Right.
So when they get their movie set, they'll be able to push forward with a much better configuration against Alice. For the window between now and when that set comes out, it's going to be very awkward for them because their level 1 game does not do well into Alice at all. So they will probably get bodied at level 1, and then they'll have to wait till level 2 to try and even the score.
Right.
So not great. Honestly, the best answers for this card, level 2 Slayers. Level 2 Slayers are very, very good because they don't cost you anything. Yeah. So it is possible that they can pay 3 and just keep Alice after you've killed her.
But that means They've paid 3.
Right, and so this is the type of deck that needs to generate lots of advantage, needs to generate lots of resources. So if you play 2 free guys and you reverse both Alice's, it is very awkward to pay 6 to keep 2 cards on board so that you can generate 5 next turn. Right, that's a net negative on stock. So if you have a really good 2-Slayer that you can just jam, it's on color, it fits with the rest of your deck, and you can just put it out on the board and do it, great.
So, Kobayashi fans, I'd like to offer you this Alulu. She's a 10k, but she says no backup. And let's be honest, she's great. You're playing it in 8 bar. We're slamming the climax. And Alice Slayer to go.
So yeah, cards like that are very set specific, you'll have to look for those. If you have anti-early at level 1, so quintuplets, Bang Dream, they both have the same flavor of anti-early to memory, which is a hard removal.
I think SDS runs it as well.
Yeah, they can.
opt into it.
I think in general they've opted not to, and I'm not sure they even care, but they can. It's there. Many other sets have anti-early to the bottom of the deck. That gets rid of, or anti-early to stock, that gets rid of Alice really
or clock. Anything that's not just reverse is all we're saying.
So you can send it to various zones with bombs. That's kind of the next tier below of solutions. Not great, but still will get the job done. Does remove the card. Possible it could come back, but timing is a factor with Alice. So that's your next best solution. Third best solution, ignore and avoid, which is not a great solution, but if you don't have any other way, then that's what you're gonna have to do.
The good old scuff turn.
Yes.
It's in all of our toolboxes, and with some decks, we're just gonna have to pull it out.
Yeah, and you might see decks moving towards level 0 advantage engines now, or advantage engines that work from the back row, where they don't provide tremendously good advantage, but they're cheap and they're low risk. So similar to the 7DS one, which is a very, very good one. There are other ones that exist that you can use to generate advantage from the back row. So Kaguya has one that's very, very decent. It generates free stock from the back row, and you can use the free stock to buy hand advantage, basically. So you might see the meta start to tilt towards those sort of things, just because this is going to fundamentally become difficult for a lot of decks. And how you respond to Alice is going to be very individualistic and set specific. But if you don't have an answer at all, then it's going to be a very hard road.
Yeah. So that's Alice. It's coming. It's coming in hot. Pray that you have the answer, and if not, as we've said, the good old scuff turn is there for you. It might not be great, but if you can scuff it out, answers on the horizon. Hopefully.
Yeah, and I think as a final note for that, you can just rush this deck.
Oh yeah.
If nothing else, you can just jam 3 zeros and try to pummel them so that they can't set up. That's a strategy. So
if they're at level 2 when they're playing Alice, then come on, you've already won. If it's not early, it's not ideal.
Exactly.
And that's gonna be it today. I definitely said that I thought this was a shorter episode, and I looked at the clock. It's definitely just also an hour long.
Yeah, when we get into when we get to talking about some stuff like this, you just lose track of time.
That's how it is sometimes. But thank you so much for listening or watching, which realistically is just listening. I haven't edited the cards in properly for a while because I've been going to locals 6 days a week, which a lot of practice. Highly don't recommend. Having time in life to do other things besides Weiss Schwarz is a pretty cool thing. So pretty sure there's a balance between the unfortunate 1 local a month and the 6 locals a week.
Yeah,
but that's the life. After Houston, I am going to calm down and also have more time to edit this show, which will be great. But that'll be it for us today. So tune in next time after your next deck out, and don't you forget to take the refresh point.